show is sponsored by HiveMind CRM. It is more than just a CRM. It is a real estate and business mastermind that comes with an all-in-one CRM. You can have unlimited websites and users. You can call, text, RVM, and email all in one user interface. And you can set up custom automations for any type and multiple businesses. 65% of companies start using a CRM system within the first 5 years of business. Once implemented, the HiveMind will save you on marketing, give you more time, and make more money. One of our users had his first $100,000 month using our system in June. We want to see you automate and accelerate your business. Text us at 210-972-1842 for future meetings, and of course to get our $1 course on how to make more than 6 figures on one land deal. You can schedule your free demo today at hivemindcrm.io.
Hey, welcome to the show today. We're here with Tina Larsson, who's been a real estate investor for a long time, but we're going to talk about that and some of her endeavors. But one of the first questions I always like asking when we jump right into it is, how did you end up in real estate? Because a lot of people, sometimes they fall into it, they choose to go to this path. Those people are born into it. They're like 3 generations into real estate. How did you end up in real estate? What's the story?
Thank you, Daniel, for having me. And so first of all, I didn't grow up with this. This was a complete accident.
Okay.
Yeah. So we bought an apartment in New York City in a co-op in 2004.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. And we were not involved at all. We were just passive owners, residents. And then during the financial crisis in 2008, we got another letter from the co-op board saying that they were increasing their maintenance by 5% for the 10th year in a row. My background is in finance, so I understand how to look at numbers. And when they were telling us that basically the maintenance was increasing at the rate of expenses, during that time there was no inflation, so there's no reason for expenses to increase by 5% for 10 years in a row. So we actually held a coup. Very exciting.
Oh, man.
We get a few neighbors involved, and we took over the majority of the board. My husband is the board president because, in my opinion, he's more diplomatic than I am.
Okay.
So he joined the board, but you can only join one person from each department. I did what I know from finance, from analyzing businesses. I went in to get financial statements for many other buildings. And in doing so, I was able to identify what expenses were high or low or normal. And we were able to save the building $340,000 in the first 3 years.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And with the cap rate, that's probably a good addition to their value of the property as well.
Yes. So my husband is still the board president, and they have not increased maintenance for 8 out of the last 10 years since he joined.
Yeah.
So the maintenance in this building went from being very high in comparison to all the other buildings that are similar in size and shape and etc. and structure, to now being on the very low side. So that has really increased the property values for this building, by all the apartments in the building, by much more than all the adjacent or similar buildings.
Wow. So was it like, was the maintenance like were they overcharging?
No, they were just wasting money.
They're just wasting money. They weren't being frugal. That's one thing. It's crazy to think about it, how like some commercial owners don't understand that all their expenses go into the value of the property. So when people that know what they're doing, they're always trying to limit their expenses because they're always trying to raise the value of the property. And
Yeah.
it's crazy that they didn't understand that. But so you're part of the board. Is this like a New York City building? Like,
yes. Yep. It's a New York City building. In New York City, I believe that there are like 12,000 co-op and condo buildings. Yeah. So it's a large market for us. And
I've never talked to anybody about New York City because I know New York City, like whenever people think real estate, they think like single family, multifamily of like apartments, stuff like that. But like I've never talked to anybody that's actually owned buildings before, and especially buildings like that. So there's 12 co-ops inside of like a high rise that operate each sector. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, so each building, so a multifamily building, it's
Uh-huh.
one guy or a gal or a consortium or something who owns
Yeah,
the building.
yeah,
And then let's say that it's a 200 unit apartment or there are 200 apartments. So they have this apartment building. Then they collect rent from the renters, and hopefully that covers all of their expenses of running the building.
yeah.
For a co-op or condo, it can be exactly the same type building. So a 200 unit apartment building, but they don't operate on a profit mode. So they operate with that the maintenance, which is what is passed on to the owners, to those 200 unit owners.
Okay, okay. I'm understanding now.
They're supposed to cover all the expenses for the year. So in
Gotcha.
this particular building, the expenses when we took over in 2011 were $3 million in total. In between, well, this happened to be 170 units, but just for simplicity. So if it's 200 apartments and you're supposed to cover 3 million in expenses, then every year when the expenses increase, because as you know, expenses increase, but they shouldn't increase by 5% per year every single year for 10 years
Yeah.
in a row. Well, now in the inflationary environment, it's possible that many will, but at the time when we took over during the financial crisis 2008, there's no reason for expenses to increase that much.
I understand it now. I understand it. So I'm really glad you explained that because I've never, like I said, I've known about condos. I didn't understand that part. Like this is a part where like I love real estate because there's always new information that I've never heard of. So I'm glad you explained that. So that is amazing. So you're able now. I get the full picture. You're able to bring the expenses down for the building, which is your part owner of the building because you are a condo owner.
Mhm.
Ah, gotcha. Which made your property more valuable. Which made your
Yeah.
little unit more valuable that you own.
Yes. And when you buy an apartment, you're basically basing how much you can pay based on the total monthly dues plus your mortgage.
Yeah,
Because you have to decide on how much can we afford to pay based on your monthly dues plus mortgage. So obviously if you have the same two apartments, and one the maintenance is $1,000 and the next one the maintenance is $2,000, you would pay more for the one with $1,000 in maintenance versus the 2,000.
that is amazing. Okay, so this is what you do now, right?
Yes.
You go around helping communities lower their expenses. That way they can raise the property value of their units themselves all over New York City now. Is that what you're doing now?
That's
Am I
what
getting
I'm doing now. You got it,
that's
Daniel.
amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. There's so many I love it because I've only been to New York. I've driven through New York once. I've been there. I was there for a high school trip when I was in high school. So it's kind of like I've never actually I don't know like there's like different like cities, like major cities like that do things totally different. And that's amazing. It's amazing to learn a little bit like that. It's a pretty cool insight because I had no idea.
But those apartment buildings, they are everywhere. So
Yeah,
not in every place, but there
yeah,
are lots of large co-ops or condos. No matter what they call them, they can call them HOA, co-op or condo in
yeah,
Chicago, Los Angeles, Dallas,
100%.
Miami, and Florida has also the gated communities are very common also in Florida, but also in like West Virginia, they have a lot of HOAs.
Okay,
And those are single family homes that are basically a gated community. Might not be gated, but similar kind of. And those also operate similar um, to a
okay.
co-op or condo. Only the same structure. Only we specialize in apartment buildings, not in the single family homes.
So if you go in and clear somebody's books as far as their expenses wise, as far as in the area, what do you get paid from it? Do you get paid on equity? Or it's real estate. It's negotiable. I mean, that's a good answer. But
Yeah.
what do you generally ask for? Yes, for like a finder's fee for lowering their expenses, or are you asking for equity, or like what do you do? What's your angle here?
No, so we work on contingency for the most part. We have two
Okay.
structures depending on where they are in their project, but the our cost saving arrangement is contingency. So they have, let's say that they have 3 bids on replacing the roof. We
Yeah.
will provide them an alternative, and then we'll split the savings. So
Okay.
50-50, we split the savings with our clients. If it's if we reduce how much electricity they use in the basement or in the hallways or in the lobby, then we'll split those savings for 2 years, and after 2 years they keep all the savings.
That's a good deal. That's a good
Mm.
deal 'cause you're bringing in your expertise. Are you doing this nationwide, or are you just doing this in New York City?
So we can do it nationwide, but we're only marketing it in New York City. So if a co-op board president from Dallas calls us and tells us, I have this building and I've heard about your services, we'll be happy to help them, and we can help them. We don't need to be physically in the location because a lot of the work that we do is paperwork. I mean, it's, yes, phone calls and etc. So we don't, obviously, if it's right next door to me, I'm going to go to the building and meet and shake the hands with a super, but I don't
Yeah.
really have to.
So you're it sounds like you're like a not to offend you, but like a couponer. They send the couponer to go find the cheapest deal and the cheapest rates. And
That's a very good way of putting it, but I prefer to call myself the McKinsey and Company of multifamily buildings, but
sit, sit,
couponer is fine too.
no, no, no. I'm glad you said that, but because I've never, like I said, I'm learning. This is 100% new to me. Like all this is new to me. So what's the name? What's the direct name again?
McKinsey and Company is one of the largest consulting firms in the world, and I think
Okay,
that they're the most famous. They
okay.
do a lot of, so Fortune 500 companies hire them for millions of dollars a year to help them save 1, 2, 3% to
Wow.
make their companies more efficient,
Yeah,
and that's basically what we do. But we do this for a very, very niche market.
that is amazing. I'm sorry I insulted you by calling you a couponer, but like
No,
I didn't
no,
know
no,
what
no.
else. I didn't know what else to call it. What's the exact term that this is called? Because I've never even heard of this.
We're consultant business.
Consultants.
We're basically a business consultant.
Business consultant. Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
that is amazing. Like, that is really amazing. I'm not even gonna lie, because like I said, I love real estate because it kind of opens up to many different things that you never even heard of, and it's one of those things where this is a whole new niche I've never even heard of. So I commend you for doing it, and I commend you for speaking out on it, just because no one's even heard of it. I've never even heard of it. I've been doing like, I'm not been in real estate for such a long time either, but I consider myself to know a lot of things, but I've never even heard of this. This is amazing. That's why these questions are for me because I'm generally curious. Generally curious. Um, do you have to have special licenses or training for this, or you kind of just understand T12s and kind of break down all this stuff?
And nothing that we do is rocket science. It's just that building apartment buildings, I mean, it's really a very complex organization.
Yeah,
And
100%.
yeah, they have the building codes and then all of the compliance and all of the filings, and then they have a property manager, and the property manager typically has 7 different buildings. How much time do they really have to deal with that one building? So there are just so many. And then you have in New York City, we have, so the staff who maintains the building in New York City, they're unionized.
Okay.
So it's just really very complex. And
There's too many moving parts to actually focus on this one thing,
yeah,
and that's
and
what
then
you
we have and then we have the board who makes the decision, and the board, they have a full-time job. They have no idea, and not always, some do.
yeah.
But for the most part, they have no idea how to run a building or how a building operates.
100%.
They have a family, they have hobbies. This is something that they're doing on a volunteer basis,
Yep.
and they don't really have time for it. And the only in many cases, the only reason they're running is or why they're on their board is because their neighbors said, "Oh, you would make a good board member. We can't find anyone. Why don't you join us?"
No, it's interesting. It's interesting because, like I said, they're regular everyday people. They're not like they're real estate people at all. They have no
Hmm.
expertise in the field. So
Hmm.
you so how do you market yourself to find board members or board owners that need this facilitation? So I'm guessing this is one of the reasons why you're on the podcast. Of course, you're trying to get referrals off of the podcast and marketing like this. Is all your marketing through word of mouth in most cases?
Yes, I do. So both myself and my husband and partner, we are avid networkers. We have been networking for many years. We know a lot of people in New York City.
I'm sure.
And yeah. And have you ever read that book with Grant Cardone, the 10X rule?
I have not read it. I was a part of a book club that read it, and I'm not a reader, so I just
No.
listened in.
Yeah. So the 10X rule, I read it for the first time last year.
Uh-huh.
And I said to him, and he was talking about omnipresence, that you need to be everywhere.
Yep.
My husband always tells me that I'm like crabgrass because I'm everywhere in a nice way.
Yeah, 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 of course.
And but now I can use omnipresence as opposed to crabgrass. And I I think that both of us, we are involved in the community, in the local community. My husband ran for city council last year. We are we have co-founded various neighborhood associations. He's on committee on all of his social club things. So we are like everywhere, and we do regular business networking too. Yeah.
That's amazing. It's kind of interesting that you fell into this niche and now it's like your full-time thing. How long have you been doing this for buildings? Well, I mean,
So
probably 10 years.
yeah, so we founded in 2014.
Okay, awesome.
Uh, and so we started with this building in 2011, from 2011 to 2014. And then when we had saved $340,000, we were out networking for financial services profession. And
Yeah.
you know how much everybody wants to meet another financial advisor. So I started switching gears and I said, "Oh, but on the good part, I've saved my building. I helped my co-op save $340,000." And a lot of people, they asked me, they said, "Oh, can I introduce you to my board?" So that's when we started, 2014. And in the beginning, it was word of mouth. And I belonged to one BNI group. Mark belonged to one BNI group, but we couldn't reach enough people. And over the years, we have gotten a bigger and bigger reach. And in 2019, it really started taking off, and that's when it became our primary business.
That's amazing. It's amazing. I've never heard, like I said, I'm still amazed at this whole thing. 'Cause I've never heard of this. This is so cool. So now you're mostly doing this in New York. You're networking with a lot of people. You're working on a book.
Yeah, I'm working on a book.
Working on a book. That's amazing. So now you're doing outreach through podcasts. You're working on a book. You're doing a lot of stuff just to find more clientele, and you're doing the right things. You're doing the right things. So I commend you towards that. I commend you
Thank
towards
you.
that.
Thank
Um,
you.
so 8 years in the business, you kind of fell into it after doing your first property, and you're doing. I like the way you get paid too. You're splitting the savings.
Yeah.
It's a good model because you're providing a lot of service to them. Definitely. And like I said, if people don't understand real estate, it's when you do property management and when you do own buildings, it's a whole nother business once you get to a certain amount of units. And you have to have a whole staff and people in place in order to handle certain things in the business because it's just too big and massive.
Yeah.
You cannot be a solopreneur handling multi units or too many units, I guess to say. There's a threshold
Yeah.
that you can only do
Yeah.
so yourself.
Yeah. And I mean, you have to have one concentration. And so the property managers, they deal with the books and the complaints. I always tell people, they said, "Oh, you should be a property manager." I'm like, we don't like complaints. We're not going to do property management. We do take no complaints. We only help them save. Very, very focused what we do. I mean, we review their financials. We go through all of their line items. We compare it to our benchmark with hundreds of line items of hundreds of buildings. And then we find which ones are high, low, and normal. And the ones that are high, we look at them and then we try to figure out, why is it high? Is it because the light fixtures are on 24/7? Or is it because there's something wrong? Or is it because we need to install some kind of motion sensor over the water lines? Or is it because of something else?
So one of the things that I'm really glad you mentioned that too, because I listen to a lot of commercial stuff and they talk about like hardening a unit. So they might put in an LEDs, and motion sensors is another great thing to lower costs. What are some other like simple things they can do to lower their costs, as far as like, I don't want to give away the whole game, but simple things like harden a unit, that way they can lower the costs in general as far as water and electric usage.
Yeah. So, so when it comes to water, there are many. So inside apartments, there are many ways to make it more efficient. So replacing the toilet with a smaller water tank. And nowadays, and remember, the the bathroom uses the most water in an apartment, but the toilet uses the most in most
The water
cases.
usage in the apartment itself. Gotcha.
Yeah. So the toilet, you wouldn't know how many times, or you wouldn't believe how many times people say, "Oh, but I hate those small toilet tanks. They're not. I would have to flush twice." Nowadays, they make them vacuum assist. So now, and in New York City, for a lot of old buildings, we see toilet tanks that are like 5 gallons for one toilet. So you flush once, you use 5 gallons.
Wow.
Today's new toilets are 0.8 gallons.
Wow.
So if you take it from 5 gallons to 0.1 per time you flush, that's a huge difference.
I mean, that's a 80% decrease right there, just in water usage per
Yeah.
flush.
Yeah.
That could be huge on your bill, depending on how many units you have.
Mm-hmm. And
Wow.
even if, so the more recent, I would say, I think that the current standard is 1.28. But a few years ago, that standard was 1.7 or 7.8 maybe. So if you take it from 1.7 to 0.8, it's 50%. So even if you don't have a toilet that is that dated, you can still save. And another thing is that these new toilets, they're flapperless. According to the EPA, nationwide, 6% of all water use is leaks. And
I
a
believe
lot of water leaks come from the flapper not being replaced as often as you need to replace it.
I believe that. I had a water slab leak in my house, and it was dreadful to my water bill at my house. And I'm just like, ugh. I believe that it hurt. It was like 3x of what it should be for water bill. It was crazy. But yeah, what leaks.
Leaks.
So I listen to multifamily stuff all the time. Apartments. One apartment owner was listening to this podcast, and he said that he does 6-month reviews on properties just to make sure there are leaks, because most of the time tenants won't even tell them that there's leaks that they won't even address. So part of in their lease agreement is they'll check in every 6 months to check leaks specifically, just because that's one big thing that always eats at them, and they're always checking it. So leaks, 100% will agree with you on that. I've heard and understand that.
And now this is new in New York City, and I'm sure the water boards are very different depending on where it is. I mean, it's a very local. But in New York City, they just updated their water board, the DEP, whatever it's called.
Their policy, local policy.
Department of Energy and Preservation, maybe. That's the water. It's the New York Water Board.
Yeah.
Now you can actually log into your online account and set up alerts. And you can set it up to get an email alert or a text alert whenever your water use is X%, and you can set it up in different levels, more than it normally is. And you can set it to compare to last week at the same day, or you can. So there are a lot of they're trying to improve it.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good insights that you never would think about it, but it's one of those things where it can save you hundreds of dollars a year, or depending on how many units, thousands a year, which is huge on your cap rate and NOI and all that stuff. Huge. That's so what's the top tip you can give for HOA boards as far as if they're looking for stuff like this?
For HOA boards is to call me. Can I say that?
Yeah, I mean, you can say it. You can say whatever you want. I mean,
So
I'm
that
not
we
gonna.
can help them, because they don't know where to start. And each building is very different. There are a few areas where we most commonly can always save them money. And that is to reduce the heating, water, and electricity use. We don't reduce how much they pay for heating, water, electricity. We reduce how much they use. There are other energy auditors who might work on either they sell one product. So if, let's say that we have a list of 50 different products and recommendations that we can make and roll out. We sometimes hear that boards, they hire this energy auditor. Oh no, we just worked with an energy auditor. And then when we look them up, it turns out that that energy auditor sells one particular system.
Oh yeah.
And all of these other things that we can do for the building, they don't do. But the board thinks that they hired an energy consultant, so therefore everything has been taken care of. They've done everything they can, but that's not the case. So we take a very holistic approach. So that's one area. But then we have a lot of one-offs. We just reduced for one building, their water meter had been malfunctioning since 2014. So we just got them a refund of $250,000.
Wow.
Another building, they were paying $24,000 a year in exterminating service, but you don't know, is that high, low? I mean, it was a large building. You don't know, is
100%.
that high, low? What is
Yep.
that, right? And when we looked at it, our comparison, we said they should probably be paying $4,000.
Woo.
So, but that's a one-off. It's not something that happens. So we really need to look at all the different angles to figure out where the savings are. We had one building where they paid for 20 phone lines, and 12 of them were actually not in service. And when we call Verizon, they say they have never been in service.
Oh man,
Mhm.
that's an easy one.
Yes, but it's a one-off. It's not gonna. It doesn't happen very often. So it's, yeah.
That's the beauty of you're unbiased. Where
Yes.
people might have a bias where like they're pushing their product or service on them, which is their
Mhm.
own prerogative, but they're biased to their own nature because they're salesmen. Technically, they're salesmen. I mean, we
Yeah.
call them what they are. They're salesmen. So you are unbiased, and you're just trying to save them as much money as possible because for you, that's for you benefit. All the money,
And
all the savings you provide, you get a portion of that. So it's to your benefit as well.
that's what we tell people all the time. We tell clients all the time, or co-op boards. We say, listen, we're the only vendor who you will ever hire who actually want you to pay less. All the other ones want you to pay more,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so we're gonna put your website here, the Folson Group. Nationwide can help out difference. And like I said, it's a good thing that you're doing. I hope you much business down the future, just because this is something that's needed. And like I said, not everybody's playing to the needs of the actual owners themselves. And I commend you for doing that because not everybody does that. Like I said, most people don't even care or don't even know about it. Like I said, I didn't know about it. So it's
Thank
one
you.
of those things where you're providing a service. It's a niche service that's definitely needed and required around the U.S. And I hope you gotta do more business in the cities because I think your niche is more towards the major cities
Yes.
like New York, Miami, Chicago. That's all going to be your playground. So you really gotta network in those areas because that I mean I see you as like limitless potential. Honestly,
Me too.
Because honestly, if you go into like you have the ability to use this skill to take to other countries too. Honestly, if you even wanted to go that far.
Yes. Yes, we do. And one of the property managers, that there's a new property management firm in New York City,
Okay.
and the owner, he has a very technology driven service, and it's looking very robust.
Uh-huh.
And so he and we've been talking. Somehow they found me, and I said, "So how did you end up doing this?" And so he's from Tel Aviv. He said, "I was the condo board president in Tel Aviv." He said,
Wow.
"It is equally bad there as it is here. It is completely backward and old-fashioned and convoluted and mismanaged." And that's when he decided to start his firm in New York.
Wow.
Why he chose
Well,
here as opposed to Tel Aviv, I'm not sure, but yeah, I'll ask him next time I see him.
it's the land of opportunity for sure. Is something you're looking for is like HOA like firms like that? Can you work directly with the HOA and then they work with the lenders? Or
We work with the board because the property managers, they don't want us there.
mm,
Yes. So we remove some of the extras that they get, if you will.
oh,
And also, if you think about it, you know how, I don't know if you've ever worked for a large corporation and then the CEO decides that he's going to bring in a business consultant to see if they can find some efficiencies. And all of these CEO and the CFO, they get all nervous. They think that they're going to get fired. And that's kind of how property managers, they don't really understand what we do, and they don't really get what we do, and they create uncertainty, and they prefer it that we're not there.
there's something they don't understand. I think whatever you don't understand, people are afraid of. I mean, and
Yes, very true.
that's
Very
all it is.
true.
They just don't understand it, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I would think it'd be a benefit to everybody because in my opinion, like if the property manager makes the owner more money, that's always a plus. And if you're the person that facilitate that, you'd be in a better position yourself just because you in turn brought savings and profitability to their customer.
Yes, but at the same time, they don't make any more money because of it, right? So when it comes to water, it doesn't matter to them
Yeah.
because it's not like they make any money from here or the. So if the building pays 100,000 a year in for water or 50,000, does it really matter to them? It doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah, their job is to keep occupied.
Yes, but for them to figure out that they are paying, that the building is paying too much, it takes a lot of time and effort. So if they don't have the expertise and to figure out and then take care of it, I'm sure that they could, but it's time where they're not going to make any extra money from it. So what's the incentive?
100%. 100%. Yeah. I get it. I get it. It's hard to put value on something that they don't perceive as value.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes
And I
sense.
mean, if they're not at risk of being replaced, if the board says we're thinking about firing you and hiring someone else, then maybe they will
Straighten
change.
out.
I mean, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
I mean, they have a pretty full hand with taking care of problems and complaints and bookkeeping and regulation, and so I'm not trying to defend them, but their business,
Yeah,
yes, it is. Yeah.
they have their own uphill battle.
They created an opportunity for us to create a new market.
And I commend you for noticing that and dropping and getting in on that because, like I said, it's amazing. I enjoy your niche. I like talking to people that do different things, and this is a perfect example for that episode. What is a quote that is yours or somebody else's that you resonate with?
a quote that, well, I do have one quote myself, but I can't remember it. I wrote it down a long time ago because I wanted to have my own. But one of my favorite quotes is Winston Churchill. Never, never, never give up.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it. It's an amazing story. Amazing story. I wish you well. Wish you much business. Go check her out. TheFolsonGroup.com. Go check her out. It's amazing. We appreciate your time. I think this is a great episode. I learned a lot. But I appreciate your time, and well, I wish you well. I wish you well in the future.
Thank you so much, Daniel, and thank you so much for your time and for having me and for inviting me.
The show is sponsored by The List Guys. Do you need more leads in your local or virtual market? 1 in 10 small businesses don't invest in any kind of marketing. The List Guys have over 35 plus list types to choose from, and you can mix and match any list or criteria. We also use the skip trace list and provide up to 7 numbers and email addresses. Every list you purchase will be scrubbed against previous purchases. The List Guys are here to save you time. Contact the List Guys today at www.1listguys.com. That's www.1listguys.com.
This has been a great episode. Please check it out on all platforms. Thank you. This has been a great episode. Please check it out on all platforms. Thank you. Sorry. Tina. Sorry. I forgot. I put the thing and it went away, and I'm like, I will edit that out. But thank you.